What's happening, everybody? My name is Julius, and I'm here with another audio drama for all of you to listen to and hopefully enjoy. A couple months ago, in the summer, I released a video regarding my thoughts on what a Joker sequel could be like. You can listen to that. They've left some positive feedback, which inspired me to go ahead and do a third part. Why not, right? I just wanted to see where this story could go, what could happen with these characters, and close this chapter and then work on something else. It's a bit longer than the last one, but I promise you it has a lot more passion, a lot more heart within it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This one is called Who is Joker? Enjoy. It's been 10 years. A decade left stale, boring, and without laughter. But plenty of crime, of course. In the outskirts of Las Vegas, it would be hard for the classic couple of Arthur Fleck and Harleen Quinzel to avoid it. However, through these later years, our dear Arthur has lost his lust for chaos. And though he may not admit it, he's lost interest in Harleen. Perhaps it has more to do with his current persona. For the past decade, Arthur and Harleen have gone by Jack and Diana Napier. But when they first met and caused the havoc that they did, they went by names that were more flamboyant. They were the titles of criminals in their prime, a time where anarchy had a better taste and punchline. Now whenever the lovely couple robs a bank or beheads a crack dealer, Fleck doesn't get the joke. Of course Harleen has noticed this, and like the loyal wife she is, she tries desperately to jolt Arthur's spirit. However, shooting up a casino or splitting up a drug ring, these days it's just filler. The truth is, Mr. J is having a midlife crisis. That is until Harleen tells him about a gang's plan to assassinate Vegas's mayor at a special benefit. But why would he care? Because this group is new in town, embarking on his territory. Who do they think they are? Disrespecting him like that? He may be old, but he's not easy game. It's decided. He'll crash their party. And as the day comes, the mayor's guests gather in a private hall of a grand casino. But the uninvited arrive as well. A group of men with assault weapons, all dressed in dark green rags. Money is stolen, bureaucrats are shot, and Arthur and Harleen arrive right in the middle of it all. Like two wild animals, they cut into the action, killing civilian and gang member alike. Arthur's eyes flood with rage rather than a smile cracking. And as he pins one gangster down, beating him with a crowbar, the mercenary bargains for his life, calling Arthur by another name, Joker. And he's shaken. He's not gone by that name in years. Not since that whole court situation back in Gotham City. It's revealed that these gang members were sent to Las Vegas to lure Arthur out. They represent someone very important back home. The Merc hands him a videotape labeled 2J from R, and Fleck accepts it, killing the gangster along with the mayor, and the party ends. Later that night, in a dingy halfway home where they reside, Arthur and Harleen watch this videotape. And though the picture quality is less than satisfactory, the image still comes through the near-broken television. A younger man appears in a formal suit on what seems to be a professional set, with a 3-point light setup, a boom mic that's dangling over, and a stranger, played by Jesse Plemons. "I have a question for you," the man says. "What is a clown without an audience?" "Hello, Arthur. Yes, I know who you are. I'm a big fan. I've followed all your work from Gotham to Vegas to Central and Coast. You leave a pretty red trail. But don't worry. No one else knows where you are." Arthur should feel threatened, but the overall tone of this message is of admiration. The man continues. "My name is Edward Nashton. Like you, I've taken up another name. In our line of work, pseudonyms could be very useful. I'm in charge of a fair amount of groups that run Gotham's, no other way to say it, criminal element. They call me a boss. But the thing is, Arthur, I'm not the only guy in town who hires. There's competition." "Competition?" Arthur is intrigued. Now, the police have taken some of these competitors and thrown them in Arkham, your old residence. The ones they couldn't get are still out, interfering with my business. I was thinking about how I could approach this, be different from the guys who get caught. But that's when I remembered, watching your appearance on that god-awful Murray Franklin show, how you just had enough. And then your court date? Amazing. Arthur can't help but be flattered. You are someone who knows how to worry people. And that's what I need. So come home. Show these water pistols how a 12 gauge feels on their shoulder. And when you're done, you can run around the city as much as you want. I won't get in the way. And just keep in mind, you're not the only one who likes to dress up these days." And like that, the tape ends. Arthur is left excited while Harley is worried, not wanting to lose her Mr. J. She asks him not to go. Think of the life they've built together, the terror they've enjoyed, but it's not the same, is it? When he first killed, Arthur realized who he was. A chill went down his spine that night. This past decade, he's felt nothing that could match that, until just a few moments ago. But as Harleen hears more of this, she cries, not letting him go, and with as much mercy as he can muster, Arthur tells Quinn that he'll stay with her and forget about the tape. She's ecstatic and embraces Fleck as the night ends. But as the sun rises, Harleen notices that Arthur isn't in bed with her. Their shack is completely empty until a squad of police officers in SWAT gear ransack the home, taking the property. Harley does her best to get away, but she's no match for the group. Apparently, the force had received the location of the Napier killers from a quote-unquote anonymous source. While Quinn is taken away by the authorities, Arthur is already halfway through Utah, making his way back home. And after days of driving, Gotham is finally within sight, with patrols of police on nearly every street, tags of different gangs all over, and more homeless than before. It's good to be home. While cruising, Arthur is pulled over by two officers, young beat cops. They're already with a chip on their shoulder due to the stench of this dreadful city. But something happens. Slowly, they recognize him. Though years have passed, no one could forget that look in someone's eye. The look of a madman. But before they call it in, or even cuff Arthur, the officers are shot down by local gangs. The thugs are dressed similarly to the ones in Las Vegas. They were sent to escort Mr. Fleck to his host. And deeper into Gotham's underbelly they go, a dark, hopeless basement of the earth. Finally, they reach the home of Mr. Nashton, a shack stacked with books, papers, city blueprints, stacks of dynamite, cut-out letters from magazines. However, it's all neatly stacked and organized, certainly the home of someone with OCD. And out Nashton comes, greeting Fleck. He couldn't be any more honored. This man started it all. Arthur was the one who wrote the Criminals of Gotham, a new mission statement. He asks Fleck a question that's bothered him most of his life. Why did he give up the Joker? For a decade, he laid low in Vegas, assuming a different identity. Why? Just why would he let go of an identity that was so special, that meant so much? To this, Arthur says nothing. Nashton notices the tension and moves on, showing a map of Gotham, marked up crudely, dividing different areas of territory. On the east side, Edward's territory, marked up with a giant green question mark. In the south, penguins are drawn, signaling property owned by Mr. Oswald Cobblepot. In the north, territory owned by Rupert Thorne. And in the west, well, that's a different story. The west side is completely scribbled off. It used to be owned by Roman Sionis' gang. That is until Sionis was taken down by a new guy, someone else trying to mark up his own territory. Arthur asks who it is, and Nashton tells him that that's the ultimate riddle. But for now, they're going to hit these other players, and they could use Arthur's sense of flair and creativity. Arthur will cause a great distraction in the middle of the city, keeping police on the other family's payroll occupied while Edward's men make the hits quietly. And to be honest, Arthur is disappointed. He's just there for a party trick? Nothing substantial? Why do they need him for this? Well, think about it. Who would want to miss the return of the Joker? You'd better believe no cop would. Chaos in the streets, and by the end of the night, the city is theirs. The cops will be theirs. And more importantly, the camera will be on Arthur. After all these years hiding, how could he pass up the ultimate performance? It is tempting. But what about the new guy, the guy who took Sionis down? Nashton tells Arthur not to worry about him. He won't last long. But why's that? Arthur asks. Because he didn't even have the guts to kill Roman. Guys like that don't last long in this game. And finally, Arthur agrees. But first, he needs to get ready. His makeup, his tailored suit, his green hair are applied. And like that, the Joker is back in Gotham City. He struts his way back into the limelight, followed by an army of thugs, right in the middle of the streets of this beaten city. And then the chaos begins. But in the other parts of the city, the places where Cobblepot, Thorne, and all their men reside, they've been sent letters encased by green envelopes. The front of the paper asks, "What is a Riddler?" And as the mob bosses open the letters, a Riddler is all that's left. In the streets, Arthur leads the chaos, and more cops show up to stop their fun. But this is where it begins. The hundreds of thugs charge towards the officers, and it's all-out bloodshed. As for the opposing mob bosses, their hideouts are destroyed. Those letters were fragranced with a chemical compound that reacted to the air in an explosive way. In his hideout, Nashton receives word that the packages were sent, and of course he's pleased. That is until his base is found by the GCPD. Meanwhile, as the chaos between criminal and authority continues, the Joker dances in the middle of the streets, surrounded by unrelenting brutality. The visual similarity to the night he killed Franklin is uncanny. Clowns, riddlers, thugs everywhere, destroying everything. And suddenly, Arthur's spine feels that chill once more. However, his dance is short-lived. He's contacted on a radio by Nashton, telling him that he's cornered off by the cops. Somehow they found him, and he'll be taken in a matter of minutes. And Nashton's tone towards Arthur shifts. He's now suspicious. How convenient the cops find out exactly where he and his men were stationed. Almost as if someone tipped them off, because he knows his men are solid and too afraid of his intellect. And once Edward's done insinuating, he accuses Arthur of being the rat. But Fleck doesn't know what he's talking about. Why would he do this? Nashton surmises that there are plenty of motivations. Maybe he wants him out of the way so Fleck can take back his city, or Edward's underutilization of Arthur within the plan was an insult, one that warranted the treachery, or a simpler reason. The Joker wants to prove that he's still the Joker. He's terrified of being forgotten, of being alone, of resulting to nothing. And a random act of anarchy like this would keep him in the game for just a little bit longer. Though Arthur denies Ed's claim, there's a hint of truth in his words, but it's too late. Nashton orders his gangsters, all of them, to kill the Joker. No one screws with the Riddler. The legions of gangsters look away from the police and to Arthur, who runs as fast as he can. As he runs, it seems that at every corner there's another gangster that wants him dead. Hundreds are chasing him deeper into the city, but eventually they stop, because while Arthur was fleeing, he made his way into the west side, the dark zone. Now, Arthur is alone, in a dimly lit alley, with his sweat ruining his makeup. As he catches his breath, different thoughts run through his mind, along with a few light chuckles. But then, one brave, or very stupid mobster approaches him, with gun in hand. But before he can aim properly, let alone pull the trigger, his hand is tied up. A thin wire shooting from above, and unexpectedly, the thug is lifted straight into the air, into the darkness of the alley. His screams are heard until a strong punch ends them. Arthur is concerned, but somewhat excited. He asks if this person is the same one who took down Sionis, this new guy in town that everyone's heard about. But there's no answer, only the sound of footsteps from behind. And finally, as Arthur turns around, the last thing he sees are the two glowing white eyes of a tall man, shrouded in black, with piercing horns atop his head. And then, bam! Pow! He's knocked unconscious. As he drifts from the black, Arthur wakes up finally, strapped to a viewing table. This table is in an operating room in what looks to be a hospital. A man approaches in a white coat. His face is shrouded by the light from above. Looking to Fleck, he welcomes him home. Arthur is back in Arkham State Hospital. But who is this man? Well, he runs Arkham, and he goes by Dr. Hugo Strange, played by Donald Sutherland. An odd man with a caring yet worrying look in his eye. This Strange, he acts familiar towards Arthur, as a friend, an old one. However, Fleck doesn't know him, or does he? Does Arthur know this room? Does he know these straps all too well? All these questions, Fleck doesn't know why he's being asked. Well, the doctor tells him that it's standard practice. He's asked him these questions for the past 20 years. 20? That's right. Strange tells him, in a way that feels routine, that Arthur has been suffering from a stronger case of schizophrenia than he himself has realized. He hasn't left this place in over 2 decades. He's concocted these delusions, these stories of grandeur with characters that are fantastic, calling himself the Joker and identifying other patients as fellow criminals, even staff, like Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Wait, Arthur asks. Harley is here? Strange reminds him that she's not. She killed herself years ago, after a year of sessions with Fleck. Arthur pretends that he's unconvinced, but after all these years, how can he be 100% sure? But what about Nashton? Where is that bastard? That's when Strange wheels Fleck into another section of the ward, showing him Edward in a straitjacket, with drool soaking his left shoulder. His jacket is completely scribbled with riddles and question marks. Apparently, Eddie hasn't spoken to anyone in 15 years. Of course, this revelation is too much for Arthur to handle, and he reacts violently. That's when he's sedated and sent to his room. Later that night, he lies down, looking to the ceiling of his padded area. His breathing at first was erratic, but then it calms more and more as he looks deeper into the dark corners of his room. That darkness is familiar to him. It's the same black feeling he got in the alley when he met that winged monster. That feeling is real, and Arthur must find out more about this thing. And as days pass, Arthur is examined further by Dr. Hugo, asked questions regarding how he feels after these delusions, episodes, and moments of hysteria. He's asked why he thinks he hasn't seen his mother in so long. Arthur is under the impression that he killed her. But is that so? What if she were well and off without him? Though these questions would make any normal person react compulsively, not him. He's focused on the dark figure, so that's what Hugo dives into. How would Arthur describe this figure he thinks he saw? Well, Arthur says, there's only one way to describe him. It was the devil. And this is perfect. The doctor asks him, what if this devil, this darkness, what if it was simpler? What if it was less of a myth and more of a message from Fleck's subconscious? Could this dark night represent guilt? Guilt for Arthur's need for chaos, his vanity, his anger. Maybe this creature doesn't have to be real. Maybe Fleck's humanity finally embodied itself in a form that was polar opposite of his hatred. And finally, this gets him thinking. What if he is just a sick man who, thankfully, never got the chance to do all those horrible things that a Joker would? And from that point, Arthur is a different man. Someone more willing to accept the help offered by his institution. Days pass, and Fleck is the model patient, taking his medication, going to appointments, making friendly with the staff. He's finally content with his illness. And now, there's hope that one day, he may get healthy. And as weeks move along, Arthur is met by a very special visitor, an annual benefactor to Arkham Memorial Hospital, who believes in the progress that can be made through the medical field. In an examination room, Arthur sits alone with his cigarette. On the other side of the glass, figures can be seen shaking hands. Dr. Hugo shakes the hand of a handsome young man in a tailored suit. And finally joining Fleck in the room is Bruce Wayne. The two sit across from each other, and Arthur recognizes him from that one day at Wayne Manor and the court all those years ago. But, of course, these were delusions, and he's probably only seen Wayne from the TV. Their interaction is pleasant, with Wayne's philanthropic demeanor able to charm anyone. Arthur is thankful for the young man's financial support. He's heard the stories about how a man with mental issues similar to his own took Wayne's parents from him. No one, especially at that age, should have gone through what he did. Bruce is cordial, treating Arthur with respect. He believes that one day Fleck could be the beacon of psychological treatment. If someone is broken and hurt as himself can be helped, and possibly cured, anyone suffering from traumatic events could. And as the meeting ends, the two's eyes stay on each other for a moment. A similar pain is expressed in both. The pain of loss and rejection, except it's very clear that their paths are different. They shake hands, but as Bruce leaves, he stops to tell Arthur that he had his butler leave a gift in his room, and like that, the Wayne leaves. Later that night in his room, Arthur finds that same present with a card captioned, "All's well that's treated well. Bruce." The present itself, a bouquet of flowers freshly picked, and this triggers something in Arthur. Is it a delusion, or is it an honest-to-God memory? Flashes of him as a younger man appear outside the gates of the Waynes. He's dancing in front of Bruce as a child with a magic wand, and out of that wand, flowers. This can't be a coincidence. Later that night, don't ask how, Arthur manages to get out of his room, passing different security guards and doctors, making his way over to the east wing of the hospital. Finally, he arrives to Nashton's room. He can see through the door that he's asleep, and Fleck uses the element of surprise to his advantage. Edward wakes up with Arthur's hands over his mouth and a maddening look in his eye, and the fear in Nashton's reaction confirms Fleck's suspicion. It's all been a brilliant and terrible lie. Through torturous means, Fleck gets answers from Edward. The truth is, when Edward was arrested, he and his lawyer cut a deal for him to be sent to Arkham instead of prison. But even institutionalized, Edward kept his gun and drug-running connections to the outside. He struck a deal with Strange. If he kept his stay comfortable and ran a hospital-wide conspiracy against Arthur, Hugo would get 20% of Nashton's profits. But what was the conspiracy? Edward had to think out of the box. What is the most damage that could be done to the Joker? Of course, to turn him sane, and it nearly worked. Doesn't Arthur see how much better Edward is than him? Doesn't he recognize his genius, his insanity? It can't be matched, no matter how much he wished otherwise. At first, Eddie was blinded by admiration, but now, he realizes why Fleck left the Joker for a decade. It's because he, in of himself, was a tired, old joke. But he's wrong. Arthur tells him that he went by Napier for so long because Joker belongs in Gotham, just like how Gotham belongs to him. And with immense pleasure, Arthur finally answers Edward's riddle. What is a clown without an audience? Dead. Arthur kills Edward, slitting his throat with the jagged end of a toothbrush. He leaves the body with a bloody question mark drawn on his face. Now, in the administrator's office, Hugo Strange sits, filing paperwork, looking over other patients' records. On his desk, a tabloid regarding sightings of a giant bat within Gotham. The article is circled with annotations and notes. He's so distracted by his work that he finally notices in his doorway Arthur, completely silhouetted. Fleck approaches slowly, revealing a smile traced over his mouth with Nashton's blood. The image is haunting to Hugo as he backs away, but he isn't going anywhere. He's stabbed by the laughing Joker. When done, Arthur sits in Hugo's chair, looking over his notes. Specifically, the tabloid of this bat grabs his attention. His only word? Darling. But how will Fleck grab the bat's attention? At that moment, he notices the files of other patients, all with horrible diseases and dark records. Pamela Isley, Victor Zsasz, Johnny Crane, Julian Day, Waylon Jones, his old friend Harvey, and someone named Bane? Maybe it's time for Arthur to make new friends. And later that night, TVs across Gotham all share the same emergency broadcast, a warning to all citizens to stay inside and lock the doors. On other channels, news reporters are on the streets of Gotham, documenting the terror of the night, with riots led by those specific patients from Arkham. Footage of former District Attorney Dent shooting up the streets, while Jonathan Crane throws smoke bombs inside different homes. In dark alleyways, Pamela lures different thugs with the promise of a kiss, but poisons them when slipping a cyanide capsule into their mouths. Victor Zsasz and Julian Day kidnap different women and children, forcing them to their psychotic games. Waylon Jones and Bane are shot by police officers, but keep moving toward them thanks to a specially crafted PCP. They toss, smash, and step over the boys in blue. In downtown Gotham, there lies a grand church, a holy place for Holy Communion. In this hall, Arthur dances his way to the altar as the chaos outside ensues. He's in a special tuxedo with his clown makeup. Tonight, he will be reunited with his true love. The dark shadow of the city can be only his, and Arthur knows that they'll find each other. And behind him, the great doors of the monastery open, and inside walks his love. Well, his former love. It's Harleen, and yes, she is really there. In an angered tone, she tells Fleck that she managed to escape Nevada's prison. She did, after all, learn from the best. Desperately, Quinn asks why Fleck left her. Why did he sell her out? He was bored by Harleen, but luckily, he's found someone else. And at that moment, the church's lamps go out. The room's only source of light are the candles, and faintly, Arthur sees him. This devil, this bat, this man, standing tall at the entrance of the church, with light hitting his back. Harley sees the way Arthur looks at the stranger. She was never looked at that way. She never will be. But in one last, desperate attempt, she puts herself out there, saying, "Okay, Puddin', it's either him or me." And coldly, Arthur replies, "Him." Harleen is shot through the stomach by the Joker, and alone, she drops to the floor, bleeding out. Arthur laughs hysterically at Harley. He can't help it. Every time he looks to her failing body, he has to let it out. He looks to the bat, approaching slowly, as if he were going to laugh as well. But he doesn't. He's silent while growing nearer and nearer and nearer. Arthur comments, I don't understand. Why aren't you laughing?" No response. This triggers Arthur, and he raises his gun, asking again, "Why?" But before he can pull the trigger, the gun is grabbed by the stranger, and finally he responds, "Because I've heard the joke before, and it wasn't funny then." And with this answer, Arthur is beaten to the floor by his bat. The vigilante pummels Fleck senseless. Aside from his pain, Fleck notices on the man's chest an emblem. It's of a bat in the middle of a golden circle. This jolts laughter from the Joker, as he realizes he really isn't the only one in Gotham that likes to dress up. Later that night, the city is much quieter. Those special patients are finally gathered up and taken by SWAT teams, and off to Arkham they go. Except for Arthur, who wakes up with a sharp pain in his arm. He looks to see he's tied to an air vent atop a roof. If that weren't enough, His arm has been penetrated by an oddly shaped knife, a custom one bent to look like a bat. Immediately, a group of cops access the roof, finding Fleck. It turns out he was left atop the Gotham Police Department, and they were notified by someone. As Commissioner James Gordon approaches the bloody clown, he notices the knife and takes it out of Fleck's arm. Arthur is cuffed and taken back to the hospital, and Gordon is left, chuckling at this bat boomerang. And as days pass, Arthur is examined further and further and further. More guards are added, his straitjackets are tightened, and his medications are doubled. However, none of it seems to faze him. He hasn't felt this clear-headed in a long time. After long search, he's finally found that tingly feeling again. And with this new guy, he can feel it whenever he wants. One night, in his new room, Arthur looks out his window. It's a quiet night, for now. His doctor approaches from behind, asking if he's ready for his nightly cap-off. But at that moment, Arthur sees a beam of light shooting up from Gotham's skyline, right into the air. A golden beacon, round, with that same bat in the middle. Sirens flare up in the distance, and Arthur's excitement is too much for words. He looks back to his doctor, finally saying, "Sorry, Doc. I got a date." So that was the video. What do you guys think? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are there any suggestions you have? Are there any other characters that you'd like to hear our takes on? If so, please let me know. If you love the Joker, comment, like, share, and subscribe. I'm Julius. Goodbye.